So, okay. So let's start. Mohammed, listen. So we said that at the level of the 12, somewhere it's written 12, somewhere it's written in 11 thoracic vertebra, thoracic aorta continues to the abdominal aorta. So the main vessel that supplies organs of abdomen, yes, that is abdominal aorta. It starts at the level of the 12th thoracic vertebra, and then it ends at the level of the 4th lumbar vertebra, where it bifurcates into its two terminal branches. It is right and left, common iliac arteries. So abdominal aorta is located slightly, like it's located in front of the vertebral column, but slightly to the left. Because to the right from it, what this, here we can see, this is inferior vena cava. Abdominal aorta is here. So inferior vena cava is to the right, and abdominal aorta is to the left. Abdominal aorta has many branches, and all of them are divided, first of all, like in the thoracic aorta, they are divided into parietal and visceral. So parietal supply walls, and visceral supply internal organs, yes. And visceral branches are also divided into paired and unpaired. So first we will start with parietal branches. Parietal branches of abdominal aorta, they are, first of all, this one is inferior phrenic artery, arteria phrenica inferior. Actually, in some books it's written that it is visceral branch, because, yes, mainly it supplies inferior surface
like
of the
origin.
diaphragm.
Like origin.
Yes, like it supplies inferior surface of the diaphragm. So for the next lesson you have to know blood supply of the diaphragm completely, yes? But also it gives superior suprarenal arteries to supply adrenal gland. So that's why there are, you see, visceral branches of inferior phrenic artery as well. The second parietal branch of abdominal aorta, these are lumbar arteries. Here we can see them. Arteria lumbalis. So these lumbar arteries, they are 4 pairs. They arise at the level of intervertebral discs between lumbar vertebrae, because there are 5 lumbar vertebrae, yes, so 4 intervertebral discs are between them. That's why there are 4 pairs of lumbar arteries. They are like posterior intercostal arteries in thoracic aorta. Yes, they supply muscles of the back, and they give spinal branch to spinal cord. So mainly they supply posterior group of muscles of the abdomen, that is quadratus lumborum muscle, yes, and the other structures of the posterior wall of the abdomen. And one more parietal branch, here we cannot see it, but it is median sacral artery. It is very small artery that arises at the level of the 4th lumbar vertebra, and it goes downward, like between 2 common iliac arteries, it goes downward, and it supplies sacrum, yes, anterior surface of sacrum. Yes, these are parietal branches. Visceral, I told you, they are divided into paired and unpaired. Paired branches supply paired organs, unpaired branches supply unpaired organs. So first, paired branches. The first paired branch is these are middle suprarenal arteries. I think we cannot see it here. So they supply adrenal gland. These are small branches. I don't see
It's
it.
different about the suprarenal artery.
What?
Because you mentioned about the...
There is superior suprarenal that arises from inferior phrenic, middle suprarenal, that is a branch of abdominal aorta, and there will be also inferior suprarenal, that is a branch of renal artery. So middle suprarenal arises directly from abdominal aorta, and it supplies the adrenal gland. The second paired visceral branch of abdominal aorta is renal artery, arteria renalis. Here we can see it. Actually, this is vein, I guess. Yes, this is vein. What, here we can see renal artery. What here? That supplies kidney. This one. So left renal artery is shorter than the right renal artery. Yes, because abdominal aorta is slightly displaced to the left. Yes, but left renal vein is longer than right renal vein, because inferior vena cava is displayed.
To the right.
Yes, to the right. So this is renal artery, and renal artery enters renal hilum, but it also gives some branches, such as here we can see here we can see it well. Inferior suprarenal artery that goes to the adrenal gland, and also it gives superior ureteric branches to supply superior part of the ureter. So these are the branches of renal artery. And the third paired visceral branch of abdominal aorta, it is gonadal branch, gonadal. In males it is testicular artery, gonadal artery. In males it is testicular artery. In females it is ovarian artery. So it goes, they go downward. I think we cannot see it. So for males, to supply testes, it passes through inguinal canal. Yes, so you have to again revise inguinal canal. And in females, it reaches ovary through suspensory ovarian ligament. Yes, so that's it. And also both gonadal, testicular and ovarian arteries, they give branches to middle part of the ureter. So also they participate in blood
Not
supply.
here in the preparation.
No, we
Suspensory
cannot.
and-
Suspensory, here it's boy, it's male, we cannot see.
No. I speak about the suspensory and the another one.
Proper.
Proper.
No, they are visible white. Yes, proper ovarian ligaments. So ovarian artery passes through suspensory ovarian ligament. Okay, so these were paired visceral branches. Unpaired visceral branches of abdominal aorta, they are also three. The uppermost is celiac trunk. So here we can see this is celiac trunk, truncus celiacus, then superior mesenteric artery, and then inferior mesenteric artery.
Doctor, what is this?
I think it is one of the branches of celiac trunk.
Doctor, I think this is the celiac trunk and this is superior mesenteric,
Exactly,
and
the-
one of the branches is this.
One of the branches of what?
Superior mesenteric.
Renal artery. Renal
No, it's not renal artery, I think.
Because the superior mesenteric is right inferior to the celiac trunk,
Maybe.
artery.
and this is the
Inferior mesenteric, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we will start from the celiac trunk, truncus celiacus. It arises at the level of the first lumbar vertebra. And here we can see it. That's it. Yes. And so the celiac trunk, it's very short. We said the trunks, they are always short, and very fast they are divided into terminal branches. So celiac trunk has three terminal branches. First, it is left gastric artery, arteria gastrica sinistra. Here we can see it. Yes, here we can see it. It goes, yes, along the lesser curvature of stomach and supplies stomach. The second branch, it is proper hepatic, first common hepatic artery, this one, arteria hepatica communis. Common hepatic artery also gets divided very fast into proper hepatic artery, this one is proper hepatic artery, and gastroduodenal artery, it goes downward. So proper hepatic artery, we have already said about it, passes inside the hepatoduodenal ligament. Yes, together with common bile duct. This is portal vein. This is proper hepatic artery. And at the porta hepatis, it is divided into right and left hepatic arteries to supply right and left lobes of the liver. And right hepatic artery also gives cystic artery to supply gallbladder.
Can I bring you a solution, please?
Yes, please. Cystic artery to supply gallbladder. One more branch which arises from proper hepatic artery, it is right gastric, yes, right gastric artery, that's it. This is right gastric artery. So it goes along also lesser curvature of stomach. So right gastric artery forms an anastomosis with left gastric artery at the lesser curvature of stomach. Gastroduodenal artery, I think I'm not correct. I think, yes, this is gastroduodenal artery. Yes, this is proper hepatic. And right gastric, I do not see here. So yes, this is gastroduodenal artery. Gastroduodenal artery goes downward.
Doctor,
And-
right gastric, it's from the splenic artery?
No, from the splenic, yes,
Because it's right gastric with the left gastric artery.
Yes.
Anastomosis, yes?
yes.
From the left, from the
No,
splenic.
not from splenic. Splenic artery gives left gastrocleploic artery.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
Doctor, what is the common hepatic artery that
You
you
have already
showed us?
shown it.
Yes, I
Yes.
just want to see it more obviously.
I think you made the video and you can see it in
That's
the
it.
video. That's it.
Because
Yes.
portal and bile duct.
Yes.
Common hepatic artery.
So gastroduodenal artery is divided into superior pancreatoduodenal and right gastrocleploic artery. Right gastrocleploic artery, here we cannot see it. It goes along the greater curvature of stomach and it forms an anastomosis with the left gastrocleploic artery from splenic artery. So, okay. And the third branch of the celiac trunk, it is splenic artery. Splenic artery, We can see it here. This is splenic artery. It goes along the superior border of pancreas. This one goes until it reaches spleen. At the tail of pancreas, there must be spleen, but here it is not present, yes? And it supplies spleen. But when it goes along the superior border of pancreas, it gives pancreatic branches to body and tail of pancreas. It also gives left gastroepiploic artery to supply greater curvature of stomach. It also gives short gastric branches to supply fundus of stomach, yes? So totally, stomach has 5 sources of blood supply. Left gastric, left gastroepiploic, right gastroepiploic, and short gastric branches. Totally, they are 5. Okay.
5 gastri.
أيوة 5.
5 arteries which supply stomach. Okay. So this is celiac trunk. Then superior mesenteric artery. Arteria mesenterica superior. So it arises at the level of the second lumbar vertebra, and it is named mesenteric artery because its branches pass between 2 layers of mesentery. Two layers of the mesentery. So see, here we can see some branches of the superior mesenteric artery. So what here? Yes, if we look, many arteries, all of them are branches of superior mesenteric artery. So if you know digestive tract, then actually it's very easy for you to name branches of superior and inferior mesenteric arteries. Superior mesenteric arteries supplies small intestine and also large intestine up to the level of left colic flexure or splenic flexure here. So that's why superior mesenteric artery, first of all, gives inferior pancreatoduodenal branches to supply inferior part of the head of pancreas and inferior part of duodenum. Then it gives jejunal branches to supply jejunum, ileal branches to supply ileum. Then it gives ileocolic artery.
And the cecal artery.
Yes, cecal artery to supply cecum, and also ileocolic artery to supply ileocecal junction, and from ileocolic artery, appendicular artery rise to supply appendix, yes. Then it gives right colic artery to supply ascending colon, and middle colic artery to supply transverse colon, yes. And here at the level of left colic flexure, it forms anastomosis with left colic artery, that is a branch of inferior mesenteric artery. So there are 2 anastomoses here. One of them that is closer to the posterior abdominal wall. Yes, it is artery of Drummond, and it is always present. And the other that is closer to the Rayland's arc, yes, closer to the colon, to the large intestine, it is Rayland's arc, and it is inconstant. But artery of Drummond, it is constant. Okay, so these are branches of superior mesenteric artery.
This means artery of what? Artery of what? This is anastomosis?
Between artery of Drummond, yes. Drummond, yes, the name.
Drummond.
Yes. So the next unpaired visceral branch is... Здравствуйте. Здравствуйте.
I can live.
Of course.
До
До свидания. Да, Масалена. So then inferior mesenteric artery, arteria mesenterica inferior. It supplies like the rest part of large intestine.
Before going to the inferior mesenteric artery of Drummond, it's not written in the book. What is artery of Drummond?
I told you that it is anastomosis between systems of superior and inferior mesenteric artery, between middle colic artery and left colic artery. Okay, so inferior mesenteric artery supplies large intestine from the level of splenic flexure, yes, and below. So here we can see some branches of inferior mesenteric artery. So first of all, it gives left colic artery to supply descending colon, then sigmoid branches to supply sigmoid colon, and then it also gives superior rectal artery to supply superior part of the rectum. That is for inferior mesenteric artery. That was about abdominal aorta. And now, arteries of pelvis. here we can see it. So first of all, yes, I told you that at the level of the fourth lumbar vertebrae, yes, abdominal aorta is divided into right and left common iliac arteries. And then at the level of sacroiliac joints, each common iliac artery is divided into external iliac artery, this one, and internal iliac artery, this one. So external iliac artery goes to the vascular space. You have to revise what is it, how it is formed, vascular space. And so when it leaves pelvic cavity through the vascular space, it becomes femoral artery. Femoral artery we do not study for this time. But before it becomes femoral artery, it gives some branches. Like for example, this one is inferior epigastric artery, arteria epigastrica inferior. It goes inside the lateral umbilical fold, yes, upward, reaches the level of the umbilicus, yes, forms an anastomosis with superior epigastric artery. From where does superior epigastric artery start? Directly.
No, internal thoracic.
Yes, internal thoracic. So this one is inferior epigastric artery, so it supplies anterior wall of the abdomen. Yes, there is also, this one is deep circumflex iliac artery, arteria circumflexa iliaca profunda, that goes along the iliac crest. Yes, and it forms an anastomosis with superficial circumflex iliac artery, that is a branch of femoral artery, and also it gives a lateral.
Iliolumbar artery.
Iliolumbar artery, yes. And lateral sacral is from internal iliac, yes. Iliolumbar artery it also gives, yes. So this is,
External.
yes. Here we have to know that there is inconstant anastomosis between obturator branch of inferior epigastric artery and pubic branch of obturator artery. Obturator artery is a branch of internal iliac. This anastomosis is inconstant. It is present in 40% of cases, and it is located medially from femoral ring. What is femoral ring? You also have to revise.
It has names.
Yes, yes. This anastomosis is named corona mortis, yes, or crown of death. In case when there is femoral hernia, we need to dissect femoral sac. So, like femoral sac, it is like cavity that is formed by peritoneum. Yes, so we should dissect this peritoneum. We cannot dissect it from a lateral side because there is femoral vein here. But when we dissect from medial side, in case of presence of this anastomosis, there will be bleeding, very dangerous bleeding, and that's why this anastomosis is named corona mortis. Okay.
Doctor, I have in the book deep circumflex iliac artery.
Right.
You said superficial circumflex.
No,
right?
I said deep.
Only. Okay, doctor.
Yes.
Where is it deep here?
Deep is here.
Where?
That's it.
Okay, doctor.
The level of the iliac crest.
Yes. Superficial circumflex iliac artery, I said,
He mean,
is
yes,
a branch of
yes.
femoral artery.
Yes.
We don't study it for now. Okay. Then,
Of the femoral artery.
yes, of the femoral.
Anastomosis, yes.
Now, internal iliac artery, arteria iliaca interna. It gives parietal and visceral branches. Здравствуйте. What is this?
What's the difference?
Yes.
Здрасте. И
Superficial
что,
artery.
вот, why did you come over here?
Superficial artery.
There is no place in the.
No, please. No, but you don't have even code.
Forget it.
What?
If I
No, so how will you study? You forget everything.
Superficial
Yeah.
artery.
No, this is what's difference.
No, okay. Okay.
This was difference, of course. Okay, so internal iliac artery, this one. So it gives parietal and visceral branches. First, we'll start with parietal branches. They are superior gluteal artery, arteria glutea superior. It leaves pelvic cavity through supraperiform foramen. How supraperiform and intraperiform foramen are formed, you also have to revise. So it leaves through supraperiform foramen, and it supplies musculus gluteus maximus and medius. What? Yes. This one is superior gluteal artery that supplies musculus gluteus maximus and medius. Yes. Okay. Then this one is inferior gluteal artery, arteria glutea inferior. It leaves pelvic cavity through infraperiform foramen, and it supplies musculus gluteus minimus. Okay. Yes. And this one is internal pudendal artery, arteria pudenda interna. It also leaves pelvic cavity through infrapiriform foramen, but after it leaves, it like turns back. It's vanity. It turns back and it enters ischiorectal fossa through lesser sciatic foramen. How ischiorectal fossa is formed, you also have to revise for the next lesson. And then it enters ischiorectal fossa and it gives muscular branches, perineal branches to supply muscles of perineum, yes? And it also gives internal pudendal artery, yes. It also gives inferior rectal artery to supply inferior part of the rectum and terminal branch of this internal
So
pudendal
penis
artery,
and
dorsal nerve artery, dorsal artery of penis and clitoris, yes, in males
Down-
and females. Okay, now, yes,
Doctor, you said foramen. SQ what? SQ.
ischiorectal fossa,
No. Foramen.
lesser sciatic foramen,
Lesser sciatic foramen.
yes, lesser sciatic foramen. Yes, one more. Parietal branch of internal iliac artery is obturator artery, arteria obturatoria. It goes forward and laterally, and it leaves pelvic cavity through obturator canal. How obturator canal is formed, you also have to revise. And so it supplies internal obturator muscle, external obturator muscle, and then it goes and it supplies medial group of thigh muscles. And visceral branches. So visceral branches are, first of all, middle rectal artery to supply middle part of the rectum. Rectum receives blood supply from three arteries. Superior rectal artery is a branch of inferior mesenteric artery, yes. Then middle rectal artery is a branch of internal iliac artery, and inferior rectal artery is a branch of internal pudendal artery. That is a branch of internal iliac artery. Then, inferior vesical artery, this one I think, yes, this is inferior vesical artery that supplies like fundus of urinary bladder, and it, what is this? Yes, it also gives branches to inferior part of the ureter, this inferior vesical artery. In females, also internal iliac artery gives uterine artery to supply uterus, yes, and
Urethral artery also
urethral.
to supply the male urethra, I think, and the female urethra.
I think it's from inferior vesicle. Yes, urethral branches from inferior vesicle. And also it gives umbilical artery, arteria umbilicalis. So this umbilical artery, no, it passes here. This umbilical artery functions only during fetal period. Здравствуйте. During fetal period. After the birth, most part of, to provide gas exchange, yes, in the placenta. After the birth, most part of umbilical artery overgrows with connective tissue. And only the very first part stays, because from the very first part, superior vesical artery starts to supply apex and body of urinary bladder. And umbilical artery forms medial umbilical fold. We said it. That was internal iliac artery. These were arteries. Now veins. So there are two veins which collect venous blood from lower limbs and from pelvic cavity and from abdominal cavity. First it is inferior vena cava. This one is inferior vena cava that goes to the right from the abdominal aorta. Inferior vena cava is formed at the level of the fourth lumbar vertebra by junction of two common iliac veins. Yes, right and left common iliac veins. And then the other vessel which collects venous blood from unpaired organs of abdominal cavity, that is portal vein, vena porta. Here we can see it. So it passes in the hepatoduodenal ligament. What should we say? Yes, so common iliac veins, they form inferior vena cava, and tributaries of inferior vena cava are, have the same name, like paired visceral arteries, paired visceral branches of abdominal aorta. So tributaries of inferior vena cava, they are gonadal veins, like testicular or ovarian veins, renal veins, they are also tributaries of inferior vena cava, and middle suprarenal veins. What we should remember that only right testicular vein drains directly to inferior vena cava, left testicular vein drains to left renal vein first, and then to inferior vena cava. So inferior vena cava collects venous blood from lower limbs from pelvic organs, and also from paired organs of abdominal cavity. Portal vein collects venous blood from unpaired organs of abdominal cavity. It has two routes. Like first route is superior mesenteric vein, which collects venous blood from small intestine and also from the regions which are supplied by superior mesenteric artery, yes? And splenic vein is another route. So they join together, they form portal vein. There is also inferior mesenteric vein. It drains into splenic vein. So why does portal vein collect venous blood from unpaired organs of abdominal cavity? Because unpaired organs of abdominal cavity are mainly organs of digestive tract, yes? And so this portal vein enters porta hepatis, and there this blood, which is collected by portal vein, undergoes detoxification, yes, by hepatic globules.
Yes.
And then all the blood from liver, it is collected by hepatic veins. Hepatic veins, they leave liver not at the region of porta hepatis, but on the visceral surface, at the region of the fissure for inferior vena cava. And hepatic veins, therefore, they drain into inferior vena cava. And inferior vena cava passes through the fissure for inferior hiatus for inferior vena cava in the diaphragm, yes, and finally it drains into the right atrium. What do we have to know here? We have to know about the existence of anastomosis in venous system as well. So there are not only arterial anastomosis, there are also venous anastomosis. And this anastomosis between systems of portal vein and inferior or superior vena cava, they are named portocaval anastomosis. And anastomosis between tributaries of superior and inferior vena cava, they are named cava-caval anastomosis between superior and inferior vena cava. So first, let's start with portocaval anastomosis, at which, like usually in normal cases, these anastomosis do not work. Like, yes. They start working when venous drainage through the portal system, through the portal vein, gets disturbed, yes, gets impaired. In which case does it happen? When there are problems, yes, in the liver, like maybe, when hepatic globules die, like when parenchyma of liver is substituted by connective tissue. Such a process is named cirrhosis or fibrosis of the liver. When parenchyma of the liver is substituted by connective tissue, number of hepatic globules decreases, yes? And that's why, and we know that in the center of each hepatic globule, there is central vein, yes? The less hepatic globules are present, the less central veins. And so amount of blood that can pass through the liver also gets decreased, yes? And in this case, pressure in portal vein gets increased. So such a condition is named portal hypertension. Portal hypertension.
Turn into the anastomosis.
Yes, and that's why some part of venous blood tries to go through another way. So through this anastomosis from portal vein to inferior or superior vena cava. And so the first anastomosis that is present, let's start with the first. It is at the region of the umbilicus. It is anastomosis between superior epigastric vein, inferior epigastric vein, and periumbilical veins. So periumbilical veins, they pass from the umbilicus through the round ligament of the liver, and they drain into the portal vein. These are periumbilical veins. Superior epigastric vein, like superior epigastric artery, yes, it goes upward and it drains into internal thoracic vein, then subclavian vein, brachiocephalic vein, and then superior vena cava. Inferior epigastric vein, like inferior epigastric artery, drains external iliac vein, then common iliac vein, and inferior vena cava, yes? So in case when pressure in the portal vein is high, blood goes backward, and here, around the umbilicus, this anastomosis start working. And they become like these veins, they become thick, and they become very clearly visible under the skin, like snakes. They look like snakes here around the umbilicus. And such a symptom is named caput medusa, head of Medusa. Why is it named like this? Because in Greek mythology there was such a woman, yes, Medusa, Gargona, Medusa. Все поняли, что я сейчас сказал? Did everyone understand? What this woman who when she was looking at the person, he turned into stone. Yes, this is Medusa.
She has
Да.
head of
Да, like snakes. Yes, her hands were like snakes, and that's why the symptom is named caput medusa. Yes. So this is the first anastomosis. Another anastomosis is located in the wall of the rectum. We said that rectum receives blood supply from three sources. Yes, superior rectal artery from inferior mesenteric artery, then middle rectal artery from internal iliac, and inferior rectal artery from internal pudendal. So venous drainage also goes to three veins. Superior rectal vein drains into inferior mesenteric vein, and inferior mesenteric vein to splenic, and splenic to portal, yes? And then middle rectal vein drains into internal iliac vein,
No, just 2 minutes.
internal iliac vein, and then common iliac vein, and then inferior vena cava. And inferior rectal vein drains to internal pudendal, then internal iliac, common iliac, and inferior vena cava also. So that's why, also, again, when pressure in portal vein gets increased, this blood from superior rectal vein gets backward. And veins, like anastomosis, between superior, middle, and inferior rectal veins, they get dilated and they form like hemorrhoids. Do you know what is hemorrhoids? Like piles.
Bawasir.
Bawasir.
Again, say it again.
Bawasir.
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 Tube.
Yes. No, yes. And these hemorrhoids or piles, they can, even bleeding can start, yes, after the defecation, or pain, so that's it.
This is a problem.
Problem, of course, great problem. Okay, the third anastomosis is located at the cardiac orifice of stomach. So, at the junction between esophagus and stomach. Yes, esophagus and stomach. Okay, so esophageal veins, they drain into azygous and hemiazygous veins, which are tributaries of superior vena cava. And left gastric vein drains into portal vein. Left gastric vein goes at the lesser curvature of stomach from the cardiac orifice. It goes and it drains directly into the portal vein. So, and that's why, again, when pressure in portal vein gets increased, here at the cardiac orifice of the esophagus, veins get dilated and they can even get ruptured. So there will be bleeding
Die.
from, yes, patient can die if we do not stop this bleeding very fast. And so this is bleeding from esophageal veins. It is also one of the symptoms of liver pathology. Yes. And one more, what did you say? Yes. There is one more anastomosis between renal veins and inferior mesenteric vein at the level of splenic flexure. Okay, cava-caval anastomosis. You should know at least two of them. So one anastomosis is located at the level of the umbilicus also, so we have already said about it. That superior epigastric vein drains into internal thoracic, then subclavian, brachiocephalic and superior vena cava. And inferior epigastric vein drains to external iliac, then common iliac, then inferior vena cava. Yes, so this is one of the anastomosis. And another anastomosis is at the posterior abdominal wall. Tributaries of inferior vena cava are also lumbar veins. They are like lumbar arteries, they collect venous blood from the regions of blood supply of lumbar arteries. So lumbar veins drain into inferior vena cava. Also here, along the vertebral column from right and left side, two ascending lumbar veins pass.
Left and right.
Yes, there is right ascending lumbar vein and left ascending lumbar vein. When they pierce the diaphragm, right ascending lumbar vein continues as a zygous vein. They are like veins of posterior mediastinum. Left ascending lumbar vein continues as hemiazygous vein. Hemiazygous vein drains into a zygous vein at the level of the fifth thoracic vertebra, and then a zygous vein drains into superior vena cava. So there are anastomosis between lumbar veins, which are tributaries of inferior vena cava, and these right and left ascending lumbar veins, which are tributaries of superior vena cava. So that's it. So for the next lesson, you have to know how all the organs of abdominal cavity and pelvic cavity receive blood supply and how venous drainage goes from them. Yes? So, yes. And you also have to know anastomosis, so all of these things.